shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. Oh God of creation, direct our noble cause. Guide our lead us right, help our youth the truth to know. In love and honesty to grow and live in just and true. Great love the eyes unchained to build a nation where
So without wasting much time, Dr. Shegu, please, can you introduce the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Sopito Obi, to make brief opening remarks?
Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Adeleke Oshuniyi. Dr. Oshuniyi has been one of the pioneers in the health industry in Nigeria. He was one of those that drafts the bill for the current health insurance we are running. He's currently the chairman of Multishield, ICO Multishield HMO, and also the chairman of the Health and Managed Care Association of Nigeria. Dr. Oshuniyi also belongs to the Good Governance Group, who has been advocating for good governance in Nigeria for more than 20 years now. It's my pleasure to welcome a pillar, a mentor, and an inspirator. Welcome, sir. Let's have some opening remarks from you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Ebitobi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and our guest speaker, Dr. Ayawu. Thank you very much for taking up this task at very short notice. The role of the healer in every society is a revered one. Some would even say it's a sacred role. And this is from time immemorial. Every single culture on earth has a special place for those whose work is the healing of man. And this is the role that, by the special grace of God, all of us here have been cast into. We have a responsibility to those who are under our care. Indeed, so respected are practitioners of the art of healing that when I started out my career in one of the military hospitals back in the 80s, you would see hardened veterans suddenly become very respectful when in the presence of a health worker. Even our very, very tough policemen on Nigerian roads, when they are made aware that the person they're discussing with is of our profession, you can see that they become disarmed and very respectful. So it is this position of trust which we carry around with us like a cloud that brings us to a very, very significant role in our country today. We are all aware that things have become very, very bad. Almost 40 years ago, I remember the words of that we heard on radio as a coup began to unfold. The words were that our clinics have become mere consulting rooms. That was almost 40 years ago. Now, you can't even describe what our clinics have become. So it is our duty, our sacred duty, to put in our own efforts to try and reverse this trend. And that is why we are members of this very respected group. Reverberations of the actions, our outreaches, almost 50 outreaches nationwide, have reached every corner of the campaign organization. And I can assure you that we are very, very highly respected. Today, we're going to listen to Dr. Ayaun as he gives us a lecture on a subject that we're all very anxious to listen to. Ours is a career, it's a profession where you learn throughout the lifetime. There's always something new. So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you all and welcome Dr. Ayaun to this occasion today. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Shuni, for your brief opening remarks. So the next thing that we have on the item is the citation of Dr. Benjamin Nnadozie Anyanwu, and this will be taken by Dr. Anwole, the coordinator, Doctors for PTOB, Lagos State. Dr. Anwole, please go ahead and make the citation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm humbled to read the citation of Dr. Benjamin Nnadozie Anyanwu this evening. Dr. Benjamin Anyanwu received his medical education in Nigeria from the prestigious University of Nigeria. He graduated with an MBBS degree in 1994. Like most young professionals in the 90s, he left the country soon after his NYSC. He practiced in the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Grenada, West Indies. He was a senior clinical instructor of cell biology and neuroanatomy at the St. John's University School of Medicine, Grenada. Following that, he proceeded to the United States of America, eventually undergoing neurology residency training at JFK Medical Center, Seton Hall University Hospital in Edison, New Jersey. He underwent post-residency fellowship training in vascular neurology and neuroscience intensive care at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Anyanwu is board certified in general neurology, vascular neurology, neurocritical care by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and United Council for Neurological Subspecialties. He was the first Nigerian neurologist to train in the subspecialty field of neurocritical and intensive care in the United States. Dr. Anyanwu worked as a full-time neurologist and neurocritical care specialist at Novant Health Forsyth Medical Center, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where he was at various times the medical director of stroke, medical director of neuro ICU, and eventually the chairman of neurosciences. During his leadership at Novant Health as the stroke medical director, he was responsible for the accreditations for the primary stroke program of the hospital and also the accreditation of the hospital as a comprehensive stroke center. He also developed an algorithm for a head bleed telemedicine program, first of such programs nationally in the United States. He is well published in many journals and has led several clinical research in the critical care and the clinical drug trials. In 2020, he returned to Nigeria to set up the region's healthcare system, Region Stroke and Neuroscience Hospital in Imo State. He is a philanthropist and a public health advocate. He is currently the Executive Medical Director of Regions Healthcare. We welcome Dr. Benjamin Nnadozie Anyanwu to this program. Thank you.
All right. Everybody hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear, we can hear you.
Well, good evening.
We can hear you.
I am very honored to be invited by this team of professionals to make a presentation on the caption, Healthcare Brain Drain to Brain Gain and Diaspora Engagement for Healthcare in a New Nigeria. As been already said, my name is Dr. Benjamin Anyanwu. But before I start, I'm going to give a brief summary of my profile. Has been already read by Dr. Anwale. Let me be clear that I feel very privileged that I was invited to give this talk. And why? Because I see myself as the epitome of brain drain and brain gain and diaspora of care in Nigeria, all combined. Like you've heard, I went to medical school here in Nigeria, did my internship and NYSC at military hospital, you know? And that was 1994, 95. Nigeria was just like the way it is now. We had a military president or head of state who, as of that time, because of the politics going on in Nigeria, was basically holed up within, or chose to spend more time within the new Aso Rock that was built there. We were seeing the first waves of long strike universities. Those were striking and hospitals were closing down. And I remember very well my then consultant, Dr. Tunde Osho, he was a military doctor, Tunde Osho, cardiologist. Some of you still may know him, still living. He has said to me then, and I will not forget, and he said, young man, if I were you, I will buy a camel, ride on it, leave the country. Wherever the camel dies, I will settle there. So remember, I was in the northern part of it. There were opportunities that were glaring to me then, but I chose to check out. And of course, the rest is history. And eventually, I made this 360-degree turn and came back to Nigeria to establish with several groups the region's healthcare. So, what is brain drain? What's the problem with brain drain? Well, brain drain is really the aftermath of globalization on steroids. Why do I say that? Because most people will try to convince you that it's simply an immigration outward flow of qualified professionals from poor and resource-constrained countries, developed countries. In our present time in Nigeria, the so-called phenomenon of Diaspora. So when looked at it this way, it doesn't sound so bad, even though you can still see silent things that people are moving from poor and resource-constrained countries to countries. But it doesn't sound that mean. The truth is that brain drain is a loss of skilled labor from very poor countries to rich countries. Really what it is. But when they want to write it and make it look good, then you start hearing those terms, or to more privileged countries. We're basically losing skilled labor and resources from very poor countries, poor children who have no education and who manage to go to school, are leaving those countries to their peril and going to rich countries. So again, it's important to recognize that as this happens, you have depletion of human capital stock of these poor countries. And therefore, it affects everything that happens in those countries. So not only does it affect their per capita income, it also in fact affect their income per capita. They have been asked to talk about the healthcare brain drain rather than brain drain in general, because as we know, brain drain is occurring in all facets of our economy. Some of us who use online banking have noticed that within the past 2-3 months, that almost on a daily basis, one bank or the other is having a problem with their network platform. And we've been told that that's occurring because a lot of very successful and smart and well-trained IT guys are now leaving the banks, going abroad, affecting almost all facets of life. So, what are the peculiarities of healthcare loss for poor countries? One, the issue is that we need to understand that there's poverty amongst the citizens. There's no money within those countries. For instance, average Nigerian in Nigeria doesn't have a lot of money to spend here. So we're already. What does it mean? It means to even go to school, it's a problem because most of us can have funding 10 schools. Our universities, our colleges are dilapidated. ASU has been on strike for 8 to 9 months now. And knock on the wood, hopefully they have called it off today in the next few days. When you lose healthcare professionals, you're unable to deliver quality healthcare to the majority of the citizens. So these are people who are already suffering, and then you're adding more suffering to them. There's high mortality rates and poor healthcare indices. So for instance, in my field of neurology, particularly in stroke, it is unacceptable that the estimated case fatality from stroke in Nigeria, the first 30 days is over 40%. Then about that number die from stroke the first 30 days in stroke. That is an astronomical number. Again, like I said, because we're already poor, there's a very high cost of education relative to the income per capita. Income per capita really describes in a very nutshell how much each of us have in our household. So I remember when I returned to the country, I used to look at 50,000 naira school fees as being little or nothing, because that's less than $100. But how many people, how many families can boast of 50,000 naira a month? Even those of us who are healthcare professionals and earn a little bit more than others, spending 50,000 naira continuously for a month for the next 6 years. And then, of course, we have poor infrastructure. Then, in addition to this, the little professionals were able to take out countries for greener pastures. So I want everybody listening to understand that that's what brain drain is. So according to this publication from World Health Organization, they rightly discovered that low quality healthcare is increasing the burden of illness and healthcare costs globally. They also aver that because of poor expertise, well, seeing inaccurate diagnosis, more medication errors, inappropriate and unnecessary treatment, inadequate and unsafe clinical facilities and practices, or providers who lack adequate training. So for some of us who don't seem to understand what really brain drain is, here you can begin to understand how it affects the development of any country, how it affects the citizens that are already struggling, how it leads to more mortality and more case fatalities, and why it is a problem for developing. So I just depicted what is here. We are already poor. The little manpower we're able to put together, we're losing them for whatever reason, which we're going to come to. Figuratively, jumping from frying pan to fire. So, looking at the diagram there, you can see clearly the countries that have critical shortage of healthcare workforce. By healthcare workforce, I mean doctors, nurses, and particularly even in Nigeria now, we're seeing exflux of other professionals in the health, including physiotherapists, occupational therapists. They are all leaving. And nobody needs to tell you that Nigeria is top on that list. So gentlemen and ladies, when somebody says Nigeria has enough doctors, now we know what to tell them. And it's important to notice that this data came from more than a decade ago. The reason I'm talking here, my aim is not to talk about the healthcare indices in Nigeria and give you the data around that, because we already know that in our country we're suffering and we know that we're in critical stage. Therefore, the brain drain has made it even worse. According to this study done in 2019 by the National Association of Resident Doctors, in the paper they published, White Coat Brain, they aver, one, that because of brain drain and the exflux of Nigerian doctors abroad, it has significant negative economic consequence on the country. They also concluded that there is therefore insufficient manpower in the healthcare system. There's loss of tax income, because when you pay these people that are supposed to pay government taxes, so we can use it to fix our road and our infrastructure. And therefore poor health indices. For instance, in my field, I just told you, mortality rate associated with stroke in our country. They concluded that an unrestrained immigration of the country's physicians may impair healthcare delivery services. This was in 2019. It is worse today as well now. Again, we can look at several captions that it's on the news, and this is almost on the news on a daily basis. So some of the captions: 40,000 of the 75,000 registered Nigerian doctors practice abroad. Mass exodus of Nigerian doctors abroad. 20,000 Nigerian doctors practicing in the United States. The reality is that in my graduating class of about 87 young doctors in 1994, that almost about 95% of us live abroad. And as far as I'm concerned, only one of that number come back in terms of bringing. More recently, within the last 2 days, those of you who have been watching the news could have read about the treatment of Nigerian doctors who have migrated to the United Kingdom working in private centers, private hospitals, how they are treated differently, and more work and more load to do than people who work in the NHS system. So let us spend the next few minutes talking about what really make people to immigrate. The truth is that what makes people immigrate now is simple. What made them immigrate 20 years ago? It is a little bit different. But again, according to the Nord, they did describe, and I'm going to present data from them, talking about the pushing what people out of the country, pulling system, what is pulling people into this development. So let's look at this thing here, summary from the National Association of Resident Doctors. Did a very good job to capture all the things that actually make Nigerian doctors leave. So let's look on the left, the pull factor. What is it that is attracting doctors to abroad? Well, they pay better, which is attractive remuneration. This was the same thing that was happening in 1994. By 1994, I believe I remember a doctor was earning about 3,000 something naira per month. A doctor of my caliber then, young doctor. And I went to, although the exchange rate was different with the dollar was exchanging at 11 naira then to the dollar. So we're earning about 3,000 something. Which really, if you convert it, was probably slightly less than $300 something. When I hit the Caribbean, my salary rose to 2,500 United States dollars. Same problem now. There's less organizational control, similar to what it was, a little bit more worse. Adequate infrastructure. So if you go above, out there are a lot more infrastructure, a lot more opportunities for you to train. In fact, I remember going to the Caribbean, and I remember when we were in Nigeria, for a woman to have a baby, they have to buy their hand gloves. And of course, they will buy probably about 10 pieces of hand gloves. By the time it's exhausted, you have to figure out what you need to do. And when we went to the Caribbean, there was hand gloves everywhere. We would use hand gloves, tie it around the hand, and set IV line. It was everywhere. So of course, they have high employment opportunities, excellent reward system for hardworking manpower, good leadership, and consistent leadership. And I'm happy we're talking about leadership here today. I'm happy everybody's talking about 2023 and the importance of leadership in Nigeria come 2020. They have good educational systems. So I've seen a lot of young people, young children. My kids are all grown. Most of my kids are all grown. But a lot of young people I see who are consultants and living, and you ask them why you living, they say, I want better education for my children. Who would not want that when ASU has been on strike for how long? 9 months. Availability of advanced medical technologies. And yes, of course, I was able to upgrade my skill, as you can hear. Numerous incentives. In the Caribbean, I remember at the end of every year, we were paid a gratuity, which was like the 13th month salary. It worked well without any queries. Steady security, provision of research funding, provision of research facilities, adequate area structures, poor intellectual stimulation. So, well, that's the pull factor. So what's pushing us away from Nigeria? Clearly a reverse of what I've presented, but there are some unique things that began to happen in Nigeria that was really not there in 1994, has made things even worse. Insecurity, kidnapping. As I stay here in Nigeria, my worst nightmare and those of my family is the fear of kidnapping. Electricity has become worse. It wasn't even better in those days, despite the amount of money was spent in electricity. And have your schools now closed for 8 months, 9 months, nobody cares. Then schools closed, went on strike for 2 months or 3 months. It was a problem. And I remember the longest strike then was the Abiola strike, but it's become much more worse. There are no incentives for research, and there's really no incentive for you to climb up the career. And there is poor intellectual stimulation in here, and therefore pushing people away from the country. You know, I hear some people want to do residency in Nigeria, and they're spending 6 years, 7 years, 8 years doing residency. If you're doing internal medicine residency, for instance, in the United States, 3 years, you're done. And why? Because it's much more well organized. Who wouldn't want to go in an organized system? And therefore, I'll tell you, despite my misgiving with the whole problem of brain, I can't see the moral justification to advise any of my junior doctors not to leave. But we're here today trying to figure out how we can make it better for us. So sometimes when I have conversations with people around brain drain, which really drives me crazy, what people will say, oh, don't worry, we'll be okay. It happened in the 80s and it's happening now. It's going to level out. The truth is that brain drain is killing this country. Brain drain is affecting our manpower. Brain drain is affecting the whole healthcare industry in this country. It's making things worse, and we have to do something about it. The more powerful truth is that the pattern of immigration now is very different from those of the 80s, when most of our consultants were leaving. So one, the pull factor, countries around the world are pulling us more now than they did in the 80s and even the 90s. So in those days, you would have to struggle when you leave and go abroad to, first of all, take exams abroad before you get into the system. Now, of course, several countries, including the United Kingdom and the Caribbean countries, are offering all sorts of incentives and citizenship to be able to pull our people, making this manpower problem. Also understand that the pattern of immigration now is even different, like I said before. One, in those days, it used to be the consultants. People who were already trained and they would go, and of course, because they were going at a later stage in their lives, they were coming back. But now, understand that we are seeing exodus of early career health workers. So people who are now going to do their residencies are likely not going to ever come back. I told you with my class of 90 something, of over 95 of us, 95% of us living abroad, and only one that I know, which is me, that has come back The problem with the pattern of immigration this time around is the annual net exflux, the number of people living at the same time. I employ about 11 medical officers in our facility, and I'll tell you, within the past 2 years, at least I've had about 15 leave, meaning people are leaving and employing, and they're leaving and coming back and leaving. I'll tell you, 100% of all my medical officers here are preparing for either USMLE or the PLAB. None of them is interested in taking the national exam. They're all leaving. So again, it is the number of people that are living in the unit time. Nobody's saying people shouldn't leave, but we put so much out at the same time, it's going to definitely affect the healthcare system industry. So an example, let me tell you, we're still, some of you probably know or not know why we're still repatriating the Abacha funds from the Western countries. The reason is that they do understand and they agree that some of those funds were lodged in those accounts illegally. But guess what they told us? They said to Nigeria, I'm sorry, we can't pull out all this amount of money in a short period of time. Our economy is going to affect our economy. Same way, you can't continue to pull out this number of young professionals out of the country without it affecting our economy and our healthcare industry. And we're seeing the effect already now. And probably because of bad leadership, and summarized in that table that talked about the pull and the push effect, which, yes, rightly we have to depend. But again, it's not something we're just going to watch, look at it, and don't understand that it's a serious national security problem. there is almost zero migration back into Nigeria, unlike in the 80s when they went, worked for 2-3 years and then came back. If not, never come back. And then, by the way, one of the worst is the so-called phenomenon, brain waste phenomenon. So we have brain drain, brain gain, and brain waste. And what is brain gain, brain waste in summary? It basically means a highly trained professional who immigrates to a country and never gets into residence or never gets into the medical workforce and end up washing dishes for the rest of their lives or selling food. I have at least 2 friends, very close friends, who ended up that way in the United States. And one of them, his father was actually very highly placed. Couldn't stand the shame of coming back to the country, that being wasted. So I guess with that, I have been able to talk about the brain drain concept and how it affects us. So what of the concept of the brain gain? Well, by definition, really, brain gain talks about migration to countries where human capital is higher. And I want us, those of us who are listening, to understand it. It is a migration to countries where the human capital is higher. So if you look at, let's say, United States and Nigeria, the true definition is that there's a brain drain from Nigeria. And because America is taking the best of the best, there is a brain gain in America. And this is where the problem comes, because some of our politicians and some of us talk about brain gain as somebody like me returning after going to learn or getting qualified abroad, then I come back to Nigeria. No, the true definition is that people are leaving the poor countries and going to where there is a better resource for them. That is the true definition of brain gain. And as you will hear, there is not going to be any brain gain happening in this country because our per capita income and where we are in terms of the social strata is much, much lower than some of these developing countries. That is why when people go, they don't come back. And not a whole lot of people are going to be coming back to make any difference. So next time when you hear somebody make an argument and sending money, they will come back, they will go, they will educate themselves, and then they take the money and come back and then build big hospitals. How many people are really doing that? A handful of less than 20 of us who have come back is going to make and shake the economy. It's not going to happen. So brain gain creates incentives to acquire more human capital. So ask yourself, what is the incentive for people to come back to Nigeria, for Nigeria to have a brain gain? Again, understand that countries are increasingly looking to position their immigration policies to attract types of international workers and students whose skills they desire. Meaning these people are actively trying to have more brain gain than brain drain. So those of us who are draining will continue to drain. That's the reality. Why the countries that are gaining will continue to gain. So I don't know who put this topic together for me to talk about. I don't know if the idea was to talk about the brain drain that we're suffering now, and with the hope we're going to get a brain gain. We are not going to get a brain gain. Rather, there are strategies that I'm going to discuss for us to have an advantage, even with the brain drain concept that we suffer from. So again, summarizing, who is gaining? The people are gaining based on what we know is Europe. Top on the list is United Kingdom for Nigerian doctors. We know that Australia is also gaining. And then we also know that United States is gaining. These are the top gainers of brain gain across the globe. Why the losers, as you guys had already seen, were the countries where these people are from. So the question then is, which I've kind of answered already, can Nigeria reasonably expect brain gain? Well, yes and no. If we expect brain gain, we have to be able to position ourselves to be able to make it possible for people to find Nigeria competitive and return. Because trust me, it is extremely difficult to be a high earner and leave all that money and come back to Nigeria where you're much, much, much lower earner. For instance, in my case, I made a decision, a conscious decision that I wanted to come back to Nigeria. But I was also very lucky that earlier in my career, when I made that decision, I met a professor who is a plastic surgeon in the United States, who had trained in the United States, had come back to UCH Ibadan, couldn't stay back because of the factors we're talking about, and went back to the United States. And he has said to me that if you really want to go back to Nigeria, you're going to have to divorce yourself of all opportunities to come back to the United States. So what did I do? I was leaving the hospitals. I made it a point of duty. I said to them, I am not going to come back to work for you guys on local basis. Boy, did they try. Of course they did. And when I came back, initially I had to go back and work for a few months. And then I realized, and I remember what he had told me about keeping that one leg here in the United States and one in Nigeria. And I realized that I was going to be pulled back very quickly because the amount of money I made working for 2 weeks, I wouldn't make it working for 6 months in Nigeria. And I'm just talking about I go for 2 weeks, visit my family for 2 weeks, I work for 2 weeks, and then I come back to Nigeria and spend another 2 weeks and go back. The amount of money I made in that 2 weeks in the US, I couldn't make it in Nigeria. I want you to understand why it is difficult for Nigeria to have a brain end without addressing some of these push factors. What are those push factors? Low remuneration and unemployment, man rights exploitation. So whoever is going to lead tomorrow has to recognize these things. Overburdened infrastructure, under-equipment, unemployment, lack of good reward system for the for the hardworking manpower. The idea that everybody gets paid the same, even though some people are working much harder than other people. Poor leadership. So again, leadership. We have to do something about our leadership and not just stand idle and hope that it go better. It will not get better. Our education system has to change because people have to see the reason to bring back their kids here, because they can't allow their kids, especially if they have young families, to stay out there. And then we have to improve our incentives, improve our research funding, and create opportunities for better training for people. So finally, I'll spend the next few minutes talking about the last stage of this, which is diaspora engagement in healthcare in New Nigeria. I've already talked about brain drain, which really, quite honestly, I can't see how we can stop it. Because again, like I said, based on my own thinking, I don't see the moral justification. Though that was not the essence of the main topic for this presentation, it's not really to how can we slow down or stop brain drain. Therefore, I'm not even going to focus on my ideas how to slow that down. But I can tell you that without an active, intentional act, we are not going to be able to stop that brain drain. I'm also going to tell you, we're not going to get brain dead because we're not positioned to do that unless we address some of those things that I just spoke about minutes ago. What can we get? We can get better diaspora engagement. We can get some of these people who have left because there are some advantages of going abroad. I had some advantage. You know, I'll tell you, I was not the brightest in my class, but I can tell you that I have acquired a lot of skill going to the United States to train. Yes, I wasn't the brightest then, but now I'm probably one of the most skilled person in my class. And that is because that exflux, that migration to the United States. When you migrate and train abroad, you have access to improved technology, all sorts of technology that are available to you. My wife uses Da Vinci, robotic does and performs robotic surgery, something that is not available here in Nigeria. She's able to have access to do those things. You know, video EEG, all sorts of things that we do abroad that we can do. There's clearly a financial gain You know, when I talk to people about spending time in Nigeria, they say to me, well, you went abroad, you got money, and that's why you came and established in Nigeria, which is true. There is a financial gain. I just told you that when I used to go do locum, I would do locum for 2 weeks, and the money I will make will be more than what I will make coming back 6 months here. Well, being abroad helps you to have better collaboration with academic centers and, of course, research. So how do Diaspora engage? Have to be proactive, not reactive. So I'll spend the next few minutes to talk about how we can be proactive. We talked about skill acquisition. So we acquire skill, but you don't acquire skill and keep it to yourself. We have to engage. We have to mentor young people. We have to mentor young professionals, not just abroad, not just helping to get jobs abroad, but also mentor them, acquire those skills here in Nigeria. I'm happy there are a few people who are doing this. Dr. Osi is somebody I know very well who has come, he's retired in Belfast, Ireland, and has returned and came to us here at Regions Healthcare to establish a cardiothoracic surgery program. And when I asked him, why did you do this? He said, I came back so I can teach, I can mentor young cardiothoracic surgeons to do what I do. And that is one way that diasporans can help reverse the brain drain. We don't just go and stay, and I know it may be difficult for us to gain, but we can do this to help improve the manpower needs here in Nigeria. So we make a lot of money too, that's true. So endowment funds is something we can tell you. The number one university in the United States, probably number one in the world, Harvard University, has an endowment valued over $53 billion. Most of these money were donated by the alumni. And of course, some of us were baffled when Dr. Philip Oswald donated $1 million to UCH to help them in their infrastructure development. I'll tell you, there are a lot of Nigerians in the diaspora, in the healthcare sector, that can donate more than Philip Oswald and be able to have endowment universities in Nigeria to help improve the educational infrastructure in Nigeria, improve training of healthcare professionals in Nigeria, and therefore help us get what I would call our own reverse brain gain. They may not come back, he is not coming back, but they can help improve infrastructure. And we have to figure out how to reach out to these people. We have to have the spirit of giving back. And academic centers also need to develop the spirit of accepting. The one thing that we have to learn from what happened with Oswald and UCH is that if UCH did not go out to seek for that funding, that money would not have come. And sometimes I'll tell you that a lot of our universities here don't have programs to be able to go and seek for those endowments. So we need to partner with the diasporas and the people here to figure out how we can be able to make those endowments and donations and help our educational system to work. We cannot leave everything to government. Even in our so-called dreamland of a new Nigeria, we cannot afford to leave everything to the government because the government cannot do everything. Just don't have the resources to do everything. Diasporans need to collaborate in training centers. So when they come, they need to figure out how to help teach people who are here. And I'll tell you also that job satisfaction is one of the things that make people to leave. And if people have good job satisfaction and good skill set, some of them may also not leave. But it's important, again, that centers here must be willing to collaborate. This is a problem, and I'm sorry to say it, it's a big problem, and they're not willing to collaborate, and I have personal experience. They just don't want you to collaborate, they just don't want you to help. And therefore, what do? You stay back, watch. But we need to be proactive, not reactive. So, diasporans need to become foot soldiers. Some of you have heard about first cardiology consultants who came back, Dr. Yemi Johnson who came back, about 10, 15 years ago and what he has done. Not only has he been able to upscale healthcare in Nigeria, he also trains young people. And I'm happy to say that not too long ago, he was able to show us in a small group that we belong to, a WhatsApp group that we belong to, those of us who came back from abroad, of some of the interventional procedures done by his fellow in his hospital. So he got this young cardiologist, has trained him over the years, and he can now do interventional cardiology just like he can. So we need to be foot soldiers. We need to be foot soldiers, not just throwing money to Nigeria, but establishing centers here that can change the paradigm of healthcare. So what are the benefits of being a food soldier? Benefits clearly means that not only would you find out that you actually make that money over time, because I can tell you from personal experience that we can turn Nigeria to a huge medical tourism center for most of sub-Saharan Africa. India is doing it already, and India, according to statistics, has almost about 18% of the global medical tourism market. Nigeria can do it for itself. And how do we do it? It's not just by relying on government, it's also for some of those people who have left to come back where possible to establish centers that can provide high cutting-edge health services here in Nigeria. Finally, if you do have opportunities for research, please extend them down to Nigeria. And how does that happen? It's not just research for data collection only. Some of us participate in industry sponsored research, especially clinical research and clinical trials. These things bring money when you do pharmaceutical and clinical drug trials. We need to find a way to help change the paradigm. And in my own humble opinion, these are the ways we can have a brain gain from the people who have exfluxed from our country for a variety of reasons. Thank you very much for allowing me to present.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Anyanwu, for that wonderful presentation. I wanted it to continue, but I think it's time for us to take in, a little bit what has been said. But while we are waiting for the panelists to come online, so I will try to share what His Excellency Peter Obi said concerning this particular issue.
Doctor, thank you very much. All protocols duly observed. Thank you, Your Excellency, for making our time to interact with us today. We invaded Taraba, and we've done medical outreaches and sensitization campaign across the 16 local governments of Taraba State. And we are still looking at invading further states. Bauchi, Adamawa, and Gombe are in the pipeline. However, my question at the moment is, first of all, before I ask my question, most of the times we see government officials, past presidents, leaving Nigeria seeking healthcare outside the country, which is quite embarrassing to the Nigerians and to the doctors trained in Nigeria. Most doctors are leaving Nigeria chasing, greener pastures outside the country. Yes. I am a doctor. I was trained in Nigeria, and I never had the ambition at any point to leave Nigeria, but circumstances beyond my control made me leave Nigeria, and here I am at the moment. And I have the passion to go back home to, build our nation. Many of my colleagues say I have the passion. We want to come back home, but we need things to be put right to come back. My question now is, with Your Excellency, first question is, what are you gonna do to curb these, government officials leaving Nigeria, leaving our health sector in shambles and dilapidated states and going to seek healthcare abroad? That's the first question. Second question is, what are you going to do to reduce the brain drain, to stop the brain drain from Nigeria, especially from the professionals? And the final question is, Your Excellency, we are wishing you longevity. We are not wishing you, ill health or anything, but should in case you fall ill, are you going to leave Nigeria to go abroad to seek healthcare, or are you going to seek healthcare from the professionals in our country? Thank you very much.
So sustainability is very easy. Doctor asked whether I will leave Nigeria for medical treatment. Doctor, I want you to ask your colleague in Nigeria. I built the teaching hospital from scratch. And as governor, I was attending them. And it will shock you. I've never been sick, I get tired. That's the thing. But once I had to do a procedure, to do a small, remove something. I lived in the UK, like all of you. Everybody knew it was from London. I went to serve as governor of Anambra State. So I lived in the UK for several years. It will shock you. My doctor in the UK has been doing all the medical checks. He didn't find that. But when I went to Nigeria, I went to local hospital knowledge. I did a test. And the reference sister who was in charge of the lab told me, I think you should go and check this thing again. And maybe you do a procedure to remove it now. But I've been doing this thing in London here. They didn't find it. After I came back to my hospital here, to my doctor here, who said to me, yes, if you want, you can do it. And I sent me to another doctor. I agreed and I will do it. It's better for me. I arrived there that morning and I want to do the procedure. Guess what? Two young men walked in. They are black people. One is from Imo, one is from Ondo. And so even in the UK, I met people who did the procedure. We're listening. So I assure you that I'll try. Brain drain for me is not a problem. Trust me, it will be a brain gain. Because when we fix Nigeria, all those things you learn from here, guess what? You bring them back. India and China have changed today. You know what happened? Because the people that went abroad came back and changed it. You are the first investors we'll get when we start building a better Nigeria. You are the one going to attract the foreign investor, because the day white man see you going back to invest in Nigeria, they will follow you. That's what they did with India. I lived with somebody when I lived, my neighbor in the UK, my next door neighbor. This is my house, this is his house. Built a factory in India. I was exporting goods into UK. The factory was employing his people. They were living well, and he was making money here. That's what I want to do. That's what I want us to do. Because today, if you send money for them to build factory, they will eat it. If you send money to build house, they will eat it. So we must reverse it. So the brain game will be medical tourism by officials of government. We will fix it. We will make sure, I won't tell you nobody will come here for treatment. No. But it must be on referral basis. So we have exhausted those who can do it locally. And it will not work, and you will see it. I don't even know where they will get the money to go anyway.
All right. Thank you very much. So we just played a short clip, 6 minutes thereabout clip of the comments that His Excellency Peter Obi made when he was in Manchester. That should be, I think, 2 days ago. So we have heard directly from him, but I believe that if His Excellency listens to this lecture, he may have a change of mind, you know, so that's fine. So I would like to invite to this platform Dr. Dogadi.
Okay, good evening, everyone. While you are at that, I'll just want to thank our boss, Chief Dr. Anyanwu, for the robust presentation he has just done. Sorry, I'm just trying to see how to share my screen. I'm using my phone. I'm not able to have access to my laptop at the moment. I also want to acknowledge the chairman, board of trustee who is present tonight. Also, I want to, acknowledge Dr. Shegun, who has been doing quite some good work, in putting Doctors for B2B together and making it quite visible on the general scheme of things. Dr. Chima, the Assistant National Coordinator, all the state coordinators here present. I want to acknowledge you all and everyone present. Thank you for joining and thank you for making this possible. I will try to share my screen at the moment.
All right, while Dr. Dogadi is trying to share his screen, Dr. Dogadi was actually the one that asked His Excellency Peter Obi that question. He's the coordinator for Doctors for Peter Obi UK, and he's a very vibrant coordinator at that. He's a young doctor that emigrated to the UK. So after making a presentation on the Taraba, he's going to make a 10-minute report on the outreach that Doctors for Peter Obi UK sponsored, which is actually part of the diaspora engagement that we're talking about, though on a lesser scale than was espoused by Dr. Anyanwu. So he's going to, I don't know whether Dr. Abel is online. They worked closely together with Doctors for Peter Obi UK. All right, so shortly after the presentation on the Taraba outreach, we are going to have a 20 minutes panel discussion where I'm going to bring in Dr. Anyanwu, representing a well-established health practitioner who practiced a little bit in Nigeria, emigrated to the United States, got his training, and then came back to Nigeria and set up a very successful practice. Maybe before during that time, he's going to share a little bit on his experiences, so far from when he started till date, about the region's center in Imo State, while Dr. Udogadi will help us to understand some of the dynamics that is at play, especially for the younger doctors who emigrated to other countries like the UK, the challenges that they face. And then we can entertain questions from those in the diaspora and then from those in Nigeria. Hopefully, we are going to have meaningful discussions.
I have just 10 minutes to present this. So I can't possibly present the whole 126 slides. I mean, most people, everything we did in Taraba is common knowledge, and most of us here are already aware of, our exploits in Taraba. So basically, at the beginning, Doctors for P2B United Kingdom, we are trying to, deliberate on what we can do. How can we, make an impact, in Nigeria from afar. So we resorted to, trying to raise some funds and, of course, embark on sensitization campaign / medical outreaches across some, states in Nigeria. I deliberated with the leadership of the Nigerian structure, Dr. Shegun, who suggested some, coordinators who could, help us pull that off. And we had a meeting with Dr. Doyin Okupe, the national chairman of Labour Party, as well, Dr. Julius Abure, who all, they were in sync in their suggestion to, consider northeastern part of Nigeria as a place of possible, impact and probably swaying some votes. They were confident of North Central, and of course, confident of most of the southern states. So that is how we narrowed down our, our mission outreach to northeastern part of Nigeria. Now, going forward, from there, we went for a search on who could help us, in carrying out this outreach. That was where Dr. Dr. Ebel, from the coordinator of Taraba State came in. He's quite, just before I continue, I really want to emphasize that we couldn't have gone this far if not for the passion from both ends. It's not all about raising the funds. It's not all about getting someone on ground to do this. It's all about the passion. Dr. Ebel is a very, very passionate, obedient, and who was ready to take the risk, going in the field work, going the extra mile to, see this mission accomplished, to ensure that P2B, is well sold, across the 16 local governments of Taraba State. Anyway, we started with a leap of faith. We didn't have the funds complete, neither were we sure that it's going to be a success at the initial stage. We started with generating the initial funds. I think initially we rallied around and had about 1.5 million naira. Of course, from the budget, Dr. Taraba made it known to us that with about 2-point-something million as at then, he was gonna, do an outreach across 16 local governments of Taraba State, which was quite unbelievable. I mean, it sounded ridiculous, but then we said, okay, if he said he's gonna do this, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And he went in and he was very frugal, very focused. He maximized every available funds to make this possible. Over here, we're giving him all the moral support, all the financial support, and he went in, with his team of about, I think about 5 to 7, medics. I would think so, about 2 nurses, 2 lab scientists. He went into the field with them, and they started. If you look at the pictures across being shown on the screen, these are, some of the communities, most of the communities they embarked on an outreach. This is, I think they started, I'm not sure the local government they started with, but they were able to, have an outreach across all the 16 local governments of Taraba State. None was left out. In each of the local governments, they encountered about, 300 to 500 patients. They did the initial consultations, made diagnoses, gave some medications, did some referrals, and at the same time, they did their public enlightenment campaign about, the deteriorated state of our healthcare, the need for, a change in governance, why P2B is the man to do this job. If you go through the screen, you will see this is Bali local government, and at some point, the outreach is held in open fields. At some point, it's held in in closed spaces like classrooms and all that. Of course, the whole exploit didn't go without challenges. They had their challenges, which they surmounted by the grace of God. Again, that is where passion and dedication and determination comes into play. Dr. Ebel was able to do this across the whole 16 local government areas of Taraba State with just slightly over 3 million naira, and it was a success. It was a well talked about, achievement. He got an award for this as well from the Northern Coalition for P2B, because everyone was, amazed at what he was able to do. Lest I forget, he took 1 week. He took 1 month annual leave, for this mission. He dedicated it to the whole outreach for 1 full month. He was on the field 2 days each for every local government. Some were 1 day, but basically 2 days each for all the local governments. So, Dr. Chima, do you want to go to challenges? Yeah. So, like I said, we had some challenges, and he noted some things as well, which we are trying to address from afar. Amongst the challenges was a lack of Labour Party physical structure across the 16 local governments in Taraba State. He also had problems with some anti-party activities and tendencies, religious and political sentiments and marginalization, political talks, stipends for volunteers in month-long free medical outreach, dilapidated road network across most local governments in Taraba State. Now, this was quite a challenge because at some point he had to send pictures, where the bus that was conveying them, got stuck. At some point, the team was, using public transport. And at some point, they got stuck in the mall, the bus couldn't move, and they had to climb a ladder to pass the bridge. It was quite a horrendous thing, but then, they were determined, to take all the risk, to ensure that the whole, venture was a success. They also encountered grossly insufficient volunteers. I think Dr. Ebel was basically the only doctor. I think at some point when he came down to Jalingo local government, I think he got an assist, but he was basically the only doctor with some nurses, med lab scientists and all that in the field. And location, volunteer doctors were unable to participate in the free medical outreach, stating the political inclination of the outreach and the risk it may pose to their job. Yeah, so these were some of the challenges, they encountered in the field, and they had some recommendations as well. And some of this recommendation was to ensure to put in place Labour Party fiscal structure offices across the 16 local governments in Taraba State. Now, this is something that is quite challenging. I wouldn't think this is what the support groups like us would be doing. This is where the Labour Party, at some point I had to speak with Dr. Shegun because we are facing this kind of challenge as well in Bauchi State. We are getting ready to engage in Bauchi State as the next northeastern state to invade. But then, there is a whole lot of challenges, overwhelming challenges in Bauchi State. No Labour Party offices, practically non-existence of Labour Party in Bauchi State. And it's quite difficult, to invade such, an area where you don't even have any support from the Labour Party. I wanted to, try to get across to the Labour Party chairman to know if something can be done, even if it means at least renting, a flat or something to call a Labour Party office in Bauchi State. They need some level of presence in Bauchi State. So this is one of the I can concur with because it's quite a challenge, fiscal structures and all that. Proper screening before appointment of Labour Party chairman, and party representative. Now, this is also a problem. He did complain about sabotage from some of the Labour Party officials and all that, Beware and sanction individuals with religious/political sentiment and marginalization, obtain security clearance, and ensure their presence at the venue of all medical outreach to curtail activities of some political talks. Arrangement of stipends for volunteers, especially month-long free medical outreach. Now, initially we didn't, because of limited funds, we didn't really, include that in the budget. But, luckily at the end of the whole thing, people were happy, and lots of people did some contributions, and we gave them, to have some lunch and stuff like that. I think we contributed about 140 or is it 150,000, which we gave them, to just use that as just a little token to appreciate what they have done so far, and create awareness for more doctors to join this movement and consider using our annual leave for free medical outreach in support of P2B at our various locations. Yeah, this is another thing. Everyone is busy. Everyone has an excuse for not, engaging actively in these activities. But I think it's all about passion at the end of the day. It's all about, there's different degrees of this thing called passion and determination and dedication to see Nigeria work. It all depends on individual differences. It's not possible that everybody will have the same level of commitment to this cause. However, we do, encourage everyone, all the state coordinators, to do the best they can, see this mission/vision come to pass. And personally, myself over here in the UK, I have a tight schedule, but even at that, I always make out time. I practically sleep late these days because by the time I go from meeting to meeting to meeting, Before I know what's happening, it's already 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I'm still trying to catch up with other things. So we really, beg everyone, all the state coordinators, to put in extra work. The little things we are doing for at the level of Doctors for P2B can go a very, very long way, to help us achieve, this mandate for him. After our outreach in Taraba, it was a talk of town. People were talking about it. I got lots of calls, even the common men on the street were talking about this outreach, just with slightly over 3 million. So imagine what we could have done with 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. And of course, extreme dedication and passion to the cause. In conclusion, at the moment, we are not quiet, we are not silent, and we just finished hosting P2B here in the UK, at Manchester and at London. We did a rally for him, and we are back, to grassroots mobilization and grassroots work. We are now deliberating on which state to engage on at the moment. Bauchi, we're having difficulty with Bauchi. We are looking at Kwara, and we are also looking at some other northeastern states. But very soon, just very soon, we'll be actively, doing some things in the, in the grassroots. Just very soon. So in appreciation, that would be, of course, Doctors for P2B, Taraba branch Doctors for P2B, United Kingdom, the coordinators, national coordinator of Doctors for P2B, Dr. Shegun Ebintami, the Deputy National Coordinator, Dr. Chima Edoga, and all the state coordinators and everyone that made that outreach possible. Be rest assured, we are going to do similar things like this. Many more are coming. This is not the only thing we are going to do for P2B. We are still, planning for, more and more robust, outings for P2B. Thank you very much. I yield the mic here.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Udogadi, for that. I've looked through the screen, and the third facilitator is not on board. Okay, so I will invite Dr. Anyanwu. Please, Dr. Anyanwu, I'll ask you to start your video. Dr. Udogadi, you also start your video. I will spotlight the two of you. All right, so Dr. Anyanwu, we are going to start with you. We have 30 more minutes to end this session, and this is actually a special edition. So I would like you to, within a few minutes, tell us about your journey back to Nigeria, setting up a regions hospital, and how far you have gone, and what are the experiences that you have been able to gather between when you came back and now. Then I'll ask Dudugadi another question. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And again, like I had earlier on said, I'm very delighted that I was invited to this group. I see my invitation as a service to my country. And that's why when you looked at that slide I put out there was one logo of regions, on the other side is Nigeria. I guess all of us here are flying the Nigerian flag. Why? Because ostensibly, East, like they say, East home, not a South home. And I'll tell you, talking about my own journey, already stated it that I left this country in 97, 3 years barely out of medical school, just finishing my National Youth Service Corps. And I'll tell you, Nigeria wasn't as bad then as it is now. A lot of things have changed. Yes, comparatively, it may have been bad, but when you look at the nitty-gritty of what is lacking in our society now and what our society has become, it's probably, in my own thing, worse now. We are more of a conservative society in Nigeria then. The dichotomy in the way we looked at ourselves was less. There was less division across ethnic groups and across religion. There were issues, and there's always issues, but I mean, it was a little bit more better. I think over the years, there's been a lot of pride, and this is to the reason why we want better leaders. So I left the country, but I left with one thing in my mind, that I was going to come back to Nigeria. And therefore, everything I did while I was out was geared towards getting back here. So if you noticed, my training, can we ask Dr.
Sorry, please, Dr. Anyanwu and Dr. Odogadi, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so if you noticed in my training, I focused on getting as many qualifications as possible to enable me to return to Nigeria. I have 3 board certifications, as you can see there. For anybody who's trained in the United States, or anybody you know who's trained in the United States, it's very difficult to get board certified in one field, let alone 3 different fields. And I spent quite some time doing post-residency fellowships, so I could equip myself with what I needed to do and come back to Nigeria. The other thing I did actually also was I took positions in hospitals that allowed me to have leadership positions. Again, you could see I was fortunate over the years to rise to the level of medical directorship of my program, stroke program. My hospital is actually one of the nationally acclaimed hospitals in the United States. And from that, I became the medical director of the critical care, neurology and neurosurgical ICU, and then eventually becoming a chairman of neurosciences. I was doing those things intentionally, practically, so I could gain leadership experience and how to run a practice. And by the time I was ready, I had to make the move. I got back to this. I started doing this, actively getting back to Nigeria when I was about 48 years old. I tried to make sure that I never got back here when I was too old. Because, you know, when we talk about brain gain, again, to me, when you get back here when you're in your 70s, that's not brain gain. You're coming for a retirement. You're just an old man, barely function. So I tried to make sure I positioned myself, get back here when I was still strong and when I was still, can still be able to chase people around. And God did that help me. That really did, because when I got back to Nigeria, I realized that things have changed totally. Our work ethics and etiquettes very different from what it used to be. They had become the people could easily pass away being lazy or fraudulent as a normal thing. It wasn't really like that in the 80s and the 90s when I left. So being younger when I came back allowed me the opportunity to study and very quickly understand Nigeria. And trust me, when I was in medical school in Nigeria, I was a really, will I use the word, the school passed through me and I passed through the school. I know what it means to be in the streets as well. So it was easy for me to learn the change dynamics in dealing with individuals in Nigeria here. So what are the challenges we have faced? Of course, top in the challenge is what I mentioned earlier on, collaboration. There is quite significant difficulty in your colleagues who you left behind to collaborate with you. And but that's a work in progress. And that is to help all of us understand that, listen, quest to build or rebuild Nigeria, not just one man's responsibility. But, you know, there are people like naturally who have open arms, and there are people who you need to push and knock on their door a little bit more for the doors to be open. And think for anybody who wants to leave and come back, understand that that's going to be a challenge, and it works out eventually. I think everybody understands that the more lives and the more impact we make in the country, that's for everybody. There are infrastructural challenge, but you need to make up your mind you want to come back here to here. Remember what I told you about in my presentation about the plastic surgeon. Actually, the name of the guy is Professor Ofodi. And he was the person who said to me, listen, if you're going to go back, you can't have one leg in America, one leg in Nigeria. Because it's very, very difficult to win yourself off that money. You know, when you can go and work for 2 weeks and probably come again because of my subspecialty, you know, being an ICU, critical care, neurocritical care intensivist, you know, there's a little bit more money to be made when compared to other medical subspecialties. So when you can go out there and you're making so much more money than what you will make in 6 months and quite honestly a year in Nigeria in just about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, work 24-hour shifts. So you know, the money is very difficult to win yourself. But by and large, I think one thing I always tell people is that no matter what you think, and this is true for anybody who's planning or has planned or has left, you are always going to remain a stranger. You will remain a stranger. And when you're training, when you're a young doctor, when you've just arrived, when you're a senior house officer, when you're in primary care, you will not feel it. But the moment you rise to the top and become something like chairman or having to eat from that very high position, you'll realize that you're still a black man. And you'll still realize that you need to focus more in trying to see how you can be able to take ownership of our country, how we can change our country, Nigeria, how we can make it more habitable for ourselves, how we can tell ourselves the truth, how we can be able to attract more investment. You know, investments only come when we have made this place habitable. The way Nigeria is now, ain't nobody who's invested in Nigeria, and I'm telling you the truth. And I have these arguments with people all the time. Nobody in the right state of mind is going to bring money from outside and come and put there. They're coming here, trust me, coming here to take plenty of money. I mean, look at the whole oil vessel that have been coming here for how many years now, loading up oil, and you think the people who are hanging out around in Ikoyi and Victoria Land, the Caucasians, that are here just to come and party. No, they're coming to take. And therefore, before we can bring them to come and put into our system, we have to change the paradigm. And the paradigm is, first of all, making yourself acceptable to yourself before you make themselves acceptable to you. And that's where I actually agree with His Excellency when he was talking about that there are going to be people who love to come and invest in Nigeria if we begin to come back to Nigeria. But that investment has to happen when Nigeria becomes attractive. I made the point that the brain gain that people are thinking about, the way we think about it, it's not going to happen in this country and soon. Not even the next 15, 20 years, because it takes a while to change the infrastructure, the state of mind, the earning potential of individuals to make it possible for people to freely come back here and leave, divorce everything they're doing abroad and leave. But we can start small, and starting small means that for our immediate environment to make it more habitable, come true Nigerians to ourselves. Ask ourselves, what can we do for the country, not what the country can do for us. We create opportunities to help those of us who are home here, because like the doctor commented there, he never wanted to leave Nigeria. There are things that can be done to make people stay back. And I'm telling you that there are a lot of people, for instance, who I know are cardiologists, and he asked them if they can be able to get training in how to do interventional cardiology, put pacemakers and stuff like that. They may not want to leave. They can do open heart surgery, they can do serious brain surgeries. They may not want to leave. And that's where the diaspora engagement comes in trying to help train, in trying to help. Nobody here in Nigeria. That's another thing that I tell my colleagues, and I wish there were other diasporans here. Nigerian professionals are not looking for handout and not looking for our money. They can fight and they can fend for themselves. They're looking for opportunities, and they can do with opportunities here that upgrade their skill level. Clearly, we do know from experience that people who have better skill make more money in Nigeria. They want to upgrade the skill level. We can reverse that 18% exflux of patients to India for medical tourism is still going on. Nigeria alone can be able to stop that tide of people having to seek healthcare in India. Trust me, it will more than account for the so-called quote-unquote money that diasporans send back home. I encourage people to get involved, become food soldiers, bring back collaborations, bring back clinical researches that actually have in money here in Nigeria, and work with training centers. And the last thing in that slide that I didn't present was we have to, in a very short period of time, I mean, diasporans, begin to collaborate in such a way that we actually open up training institutions where we can offer fellowship trainings, where we can offer advanced nursing career training in things like critical care, cardiothoracic, and stuff like that, and where we can train the new healthcare workforce. For instance, in my place, I have about 15 physiologists that I've employed, and I've trained them in all sorts of things. I've trained them to become dialysis techs. Why? Because when I had nurses, the nurses would stay for 6 months and then they pass the exams and go to Europe and go to UK. So they are my dialysis techs and they do a fantastic job. I've trained them to be ECG techs. I've trained them to be EEG techs. I've trained them things like nerve conduction, velocity study, and electromyogram. I've trained them to do field table testing and a variety of other things I've trained them to do. But these are people ordinarily who would not have a job, and you would have to start looking at this type of healthcare workforce to replace some of the people who are excluded from the country. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
All right, thank you so much, sir. I didn't want to interrupt you because you are flowing and you are making a lot of points. So I would like to invite Dr. Dogadi to let us know, okay, with everything that you have seen, representing the Doctors for PTOB UK, and by extension, some of our younger doctors who have left. What do you think is possible going forward in a new Nigeria? Because some of these videos that we are doing now, we are going to be sending it to Dr. Doyin Okube and also to His Excellency PTOB. At the end, we are going to formulate some of these things in a policy document that we can transmit to His Excellency. That's one question. Then second question, which you are going to attempt, and maybe Dr. Anyan will attempt, and then we'll take one or two questions. Is it possible for there to be a policy for this skill transfer that Dr. Anyan talked about, as a policy framework for PTOB in his health policy after he wins, by the grace of God, as the president of Nigeria? So these are the two questions that I'm asking him. Dr. Dogadi, please.
So, sorry, I didn't get the second question. The second question was policy framework for what? Say that again.
Yes, for skill transfer from doctors in diaspora to have, as he is working on the push factors and also trying to improve the pull factors in Nigeria, how we can have a streamlined policy for skill transfer where people in the diaspora will be invited into a program where they can come to selected facilities across the 6 geopolitical zones so that they can, help in transferring their skills to Nigerian doctors. Is this something that is possible that His Excellency can actually consider as one of his health policy in terms of diaspora engagement beyond diaspora remittances? He talked about skill transfer, in a coordinated manner. So what do you have to say? Yeah, Dr. Dogadi.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, Dr. Chima. First of all, I want to appreciate once again, our Chief Anyanwu. I mean, it was a robust and massive exposition. Sorry, I'm struggling with my baby girl. I'm the only one at home with her today. It was a robust exposition, and I'm not even sure. I'm worthy to share the screen with you tonight. We really wish to be like you when we grow up. Thank you very, very much for that. And thank you for coming back to Nigeria to give your quota back to, nationhood and all that. You said quite a few things, which I agree with, something about being a second-class citizen in these Western countries. This has been something I vehemently believe in. I've always believed that we are second-class citizens, in our country, in these Western countries, and we can never be considered, equals with, these citizens, no matter how hard we work, no matter what we do.
Okay. While we wait for Dr. Dogadi to come online, I would like to unmute Dr. Ejike Onu to ask his question. Dr. Ejike, please ask your question or make your comments quickly.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm happy that I was able to come across this particular meeting. I didn't really know about the meeting. That's why I came a late. But I'm happy that I gained a lot of things too. I thank everybody in the house this evening. But my contribution and something that has been bothering me for a very long time now, it's about the southwest region of Nigeria. The southwest, when we go around the vicinity, the pulse around almost everywhere in this southwest is we don't really want APC, we don't want PDP, but how are we sure that we can trust Peter Obi? Or some of them don't even know much about Peter Obi, and it's something that has been bothering me. I know I have mentioned something like this before, and I've tried to reach out to Dr. Doyin Okube to see how what can be done to make sure that all the trenches and all the rural areas, that they begin to sing more about Peter Obi in this area. Because what I'm fearing about is that at the end of the day, there might be a low voter turnout across this southwest if we don't take advantage of trying to let everybody know that Peter Obi is a better Nigerian. So please, I want to also use this opportunity to beg that even as we are also trying to invade other states in the northwest, in the northeast, that this southwest also need invasion. It needs invasion, especially I will use Ogun State that I'm based in to give account of some other states, because those other states are still saying the same thing. Okay, they don't really want, apart from very few of them that are very tribalized and so on, they don't really want the APC candidates, but they are not so sure of what they are going to do. So we really need to, educate them more about this thing. But we somehow we have some we are shortchanged. Okay, so that's what I want to bring up. And I thank the presenters. Everything we have been saying here, I really agree with it, because with better leadership, Nigeria is going to be good for it. Thank you very much.
Can I go on now, or do you want to respond to that, Dr. Chima?
Are there more questions for me? So, because I have patients to attend to.
Dr. Chima, are you there?
Yes, sorry. I had a network issue. I'm back.
Okay, our boss wants to just mention he has patients to attend to. I'll just say a few words about this question, if it's possible to let him, answer further questions before, so he can, attend to patients. He's a busy man.
Okay, please, Dr. Yang, go ahead, sir.
So I think part of the question that was asked was how can the new administration or any new administration for that matter engage diasporans in collaborating and sharing skills. So let me go back to why that's actually important. In one of the things His Excellency was talking about India. We have to be careful what's going on in India. Indians are not necessarily returning back to India. In fact, if you look at the demographics of people where brain drain and exodus is occurring more than any other, is occurring most. India and China actually are top in that list. Reason why you're not seeing that effect in India and China is that they have been able to figure out how to be proactive in correcting the effects rather than being reactive in correcting it. That's the reason. And one of the things that India has done is, one, they have given the platform for collaboration between their diaspora physicians and healthcare workers. Don't think that an Indian doctor who finishes residency is moving back to India. They don't really do that. Most of them don't do that. They have made it possible so they can train their people. They've also made it possible, honestly, so that the people can come to America and get extra fellowship and training and go back. And they have also made it possible so that the business of medicine has become lucrative in India. So that's really what the government has done. They've made it possible to be lucrative. Having said that, yes, any new government can and should be able to create policies to allow diasporans to collaborate easily, allow diasporans to participate in nation building, particularly in the healthcare industry and teaching and transfer of technology. The thing I've noticed about Nigeria since I came back is that Nigeria works with policy. If there are policies and rules, they follow it. But if there are no policies and rules written down, they now do their shakara and take individual decisions. So how can this be done? The government needs to pass legislations that allows the NUC to create portfolios in professorship in universities and hospitals and teaching hospitals and teaching institutions in Nigeria. The Ministry of Health, the MDCN, there needs to be legislations that allow that. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Caribbean, remember that was one of the things I did. I was a lecturer in a medical school. That medical school had the opportunity to have a lot of US trained doctors come back as visiting professors. So I'll tell you that I've applied severally for visiting professorship at University of Nigeria to give my time, to volunteer my time to teach medical students, neurology and neuroanatomy. That's not been very successful. But why is that? It's because the policies are not there to create opportunities for people like me who want to give back, my time. And it is pro bono. You're not even paying me anything. Because what often happens is once you come around, people think you're trying to take positions. No. So if there are rules and there are laws, legislative laws that allows this to happen, and it will happen. I know a lot of diasporans who would rather not come back to Nigeria, but would like to volunteer their time in teaching. I'm really not a fan of this whole medical mission. Diasporans come from diaspora, they share drugs, and then they disappear, you don't see them again. And so they diagnose 300 people of diabetes and hypertension. They give them drugs and that's it. So what happens to them 2 months later and 6 months later and 1 year later? They never come back again. I'm not a fan of it. Although I know that it does fill some niche in the healthcare industry, in a delivery system in Nigeria. But creating legislations, laws, rules that allows that to happen will make it happen and encourage these people to be able to come in and help and build the healthcare system.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Anyanwu, for that. We are so happy to have you online, and this discussion, we are going to continue it offline so that we can fine-tune some of these things so that SNCP2B is going to have very good documents to work with. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, sir.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Yeah.
Up to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate having you here today. So I'm sorry about the previous interruption. I'm the only one I'm babysitting today. So yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this is the UK. This is not Nigeria where you have her all the time. Sometimes you babysit your kids. It is what it is. Anyway, right. So I will just he has Dr. Anyanwu has managed to answer the question on policy framework for skills transfer from abroad to Nigeria. I mean, it is something that is very clear. I think P2B did mention something about it when he was speaking about brain drain turning to brain gain. But brain drain turning to brain gain doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't just happen automatically. We are talking about telling people to live the comfortable lifestyle they're having in the UK, the high standard of living, everything good they are experiencing in the UK, the US, Canada, and every other Western countries to come back to Nigeria. Just like Dr. Anyanwu mentioned, you need to make favorable policies. You need to set a convenient environment for them to come in, and invest and all that. And of course, security has to be taken care of. There's a whole lot of things that need to be set in place before people would even, start considering on government plea. Some other people might come in willingly due to self-determination and, the passion to, contribute back to, their country, the likes of our chief, Dr. Anyanwu, and many others who have come back willingly to, contribute their quota to the system back home. But then to, encourage the majority of, these foreign doctors out there, just like China is doing, India is doing, and many other countries, that are growing from, the third world nation, developing nation to a developed nation. They are doing lots of things, putting a whole lot in place, legislation, executive orders, setting up committees, liaising with these doctors abroad, asking what they need. There's a whole lot of things. It's not just an overnight venture. And to get it right, we need a good leadership. We need a leadership that is determined, that is determined to engage in nation building. These are the things, that is a broad topic. This topic is not something that can be answered in 2-3 minutes. It's a broad topic, trying to get these doctors back to, trying to achieve brain gain from brain drain. It's a broad topic on its own. So yeah, I think Dr. Anyanwu did justice to that question. So if our principal wins, hopefully, then we can start discussing these things, because, with the current, crop of leaders, they don't even understand what leadership is. These leaders, look at our incumbent, look at the other two, they don't really understand these things. I think we might be well enlightened, but most of them don't even understand these things. They don't even appreciate what is brain drain. They don't even appreciate what is happening in the health sector because they send their children abroad. They don't even understand the, healthcare, decadence and the whole. They don't understand what we are talking about. That is the problem. They don't interact with the grassroots. They don't appreciate the sufferings of the common man. These are the issues. So they need to, first of all, understand these things, appreciate it, admit it, agree to it. Agree to sit down on the round table to discuss these things. How do we turn around the health sector? These are the issues. So we need to tackle these fundamental problems before even talking about, the recommendation, policies, legislation, executive orders, and all that. But anyway, like I said, it's a broad topic on its own. It's not something that requires a presentation on its own, bringing heads together, the best brains out there to sit down, and discuss this thing and map our strategies on how to achieve this. That's about, brain drain and the policy framework is a broad topic. Now, the first question you asked me about challenges thus far, especially for the young ones, there are lots and lots of challenges. One thing is to pass the examination, be it US, MLE, be it PLAB, be it press, whichever it is. One thing is to pass the examination. Another thing is to, engage and adapt, in the new environment. It's not an easy one. I have my personal experiences, which are peculiar to me. Everybody have their own peculiar experiences and personal experiences. However, there are some common experiences everyone, most likely, at least over 99.9% would encounter, in this, new Western world when they come into work. First of all would be the culture, trying to understand the culture, understand common languages, common phrases, expressions of happiness, expressions of sadness, expressions, a whole lot, some terminologies that might mean, funny things to you, but might, offend them. Some terminologies that might mean, that might be a joke to them, but would be an offensive stuff. So this is the culture, how to talk to people, how to appreciate people, when to say what, when not to say what. This is the first challenge. Sometimes you just say things, you look like you look like a fool, So these are the things. So the culture is a big challenge, but almost everyone at some point, it might take, varying degree of time, some 2 months, some a month, some 3 months, some 1 year to adapt, to the culture and cultural differences and all that. Now, this is one. Okay, I'll give you an instance. There was a day someone was talking to me. I just came out of the room. I was just listening, just, see the way my hands was. I was just listening to the nurse and she was just talking to me. And at some point she said, you know what, forget it. And I was like, what's the problem? She said, I'm keeping my hands, I'm folding my hands at her, which means I'm blanking out at her, something like that. And it didn't mean anything to me, but lesson. So these are the issues. Sometimes keep how it's a problem. So cultural differences, some of the things we doctors out here experience times. And second is language. When you go to the UK or the US, counts for the US, I'm not sure what is obtainable in the US, but one thing I know is that the UK is the English man emanated from. But when you click it, you notice or experience or appreciate the fact that there are different or various species of the same English language that we speak back home. You go to a you start on English. They are speaking English. Sometimes it seems as if they are rapping it, and most times they are even speaking in some wrong terminology. So you see. So these are issues. Sometimes when you look different accent and different. And these are starting to, sometimes you need to, in tune with these things and, adapt, or else you will be lost. So that's the language. And another thing, of course, is the weather. Temperate, or would I say tropical regions, some have the challenges of cold, extreme weather. They don't really have extreme weather, but extreme cold, the winter and all that, you try to use them. And many people can fall ill at various times at some point, get used to it and all that. Little challenges you might have. When you come over to the UK, at least forget the clinical itself. The clinical practice and clinical from is a lot of differences. The consultation skills, the interpersonal skills, how you do it in the hospital, the interpersonal skills as well, how you interact with other staff. There's a whole lot of differences. Yeah, the same knowledge of anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and other pathology, but when it comes to the application, clinical application of this knowledge, there's the difference. They do to understand how and when to stop and how far you can go. You need to understand the referral pathways. You need to understand what you should do as a doctor and how not to interfere, in other, fields of, health and all that. So these are the things. So there's a whole lot of challenges the young ones face when we come to the UK, ranging from all these areas I've mentioned. So these are the things but they are not rocket science. They are not difficult things. Yeah, with time, you tend to settle in. Like I said, the time varies for different people, and yeah, you tend to be fine as as you engage actively in these things. Then is there any other thing I've missed out in terms of things you experience? Well, some other thing I might need to mention, I don't know what is obtainable in the US, but I know Canada is even difficult to get into. Coming directly from Nigeria, it's very difficult to break through in Canada. I don't know why. Their exams and the peculiarities of their system. Sometimes it's easier to get entrance into Canada if probably you have passed some examinations or gotten some, certifications here in the UK, things like MRCGP and its equivalent in other fields. It's easier to, get into Canada, as a fully acknowledged doctor with some degree of, certification. Yeah, that makes it easy to, get entrance into Canada. But for the UK, I'm sure of, most times our consultants, our registrars have to, step down. They have to go as low as, I particularly know two consultants who came into the UK, good, well, I wouldn't say renowned, but I mean, these consultants, they are doing very well in Nigeria, obs and gynae, pediatrics and all that. They come into the UK, they have to step down to registrar level, ST3. And these are the issues. It's quite embarrassing, but that is the level that the health system back home has made it to be. That is how much we are regarded. So that is it. They already signaling me that time is up. So these are the issues, the challenges we face there. They are enormous. They are enormous. But all in all, it's still better off than what we have in Nigeria. At least your standard of living is guaranteed. Better life, better pay. Your children are having it, having better life. You are guaranteed a citizenship. After some time, some time of stay and all that. But there are still a whole lot of challenges that go with, this migration. That is why some people do advise that it is always better, to migrate at the early stages of your career as a doctor than later stages, because it tends to be more difficult when you are coming at your later stages as a clinical, as a clinician, when you must have attend consultant positions, professorship, and all. It's difficult to step down, to learn these things again and acclimatize to the system. So this is just the summary of it. Or I've said it to the best of my knowledge and understanding. Some other people might say it better, but actually this is just a glimpse of the challenges we face here, in the UK and probably some other Western countries. Thank you. I hear your mind.
Thank you, Udogade. Thank you, Dr. Ayaun. I'm Dr. Bitomi, the National Coordinator, Dr. for Peter B. It's been wonderful having everybody here. Top on my list, Dr. Ayaun. I'm so inspired, so honored to be in your presence. Thank you, everybody, for staying. When Chima set this up and said it's going to be 2 hours, I said, why? Why do you want to keep it for 2 hours? There are 10 hours, we still have more than 60% of the people that join. I think it's been a very interesting discussion. And like Chima said, Dr. Okukwe is in touch with us. I told him before we set up this up, and he said I should send him the video. We are very busy now with the campaign, but I'm sure he will find time to watch this video, or I will summarize the resolutions and make sure he gets to see. So thank you, everybody. is the beginning of the journey to the new Nigeria. We had one series last week, and we talked about the achievement of Peter Obi in office. Another series is going to come up next week. We advertise it, we calculate it, we propagate it. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.